Hi guys, and welcome to another Divi Theme video. This is Jamie from System 22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. I've got three little buttons here. We've had some questions recently about designing buttons, so here's three little ideas for you. First one here is a gradient, and we've got a pill-shaped button. When we hover over it, it's going to grow and rise. When we let go, it'll drop back to where it was and change colours again. The second one, we've got a round button. When we hover over it, the text is going to change, it's going to grow. And when we let go, it's going to go back to where it was. So it's going from 1 to let's go. Third one here, we've got more and a bit of box shadow there. When we hover over it, it's going to expand and change text also. And these are great little eye-catching effects, especially for a desktop site. First one and third one need no coding at all. This one requires a tiny bit of CSS coding, but don't let that put you off. Any code that I write, I'll put down below the video as usual. You're welcome to copy and paste it. So let's get started. I'm going to enable the visual builder so we can build on the front end. Okay, let's go down to where we want to work. I'm going to add a new row. I'm going to put 3 columns in mine since we've got 3 buttons. Divi comes as standard with all the light grey modules here. These dark blue ones are from a free plugin called Divi Supreme Light. You'll find the link below. And here's some more regular Divi modules here. If you've got WooCommerce installed, Divi will also give you an extra dozen or so modules to display your products with. Today I want to use the button module. And there it is. It pops in a generic button, which is fine, useful, but really want to make it our own. Let's pull this over here. Okay, obviously, put what you want your button to say here. Down below we've got link. This is where you want to put the link to take your visitors wherever it is you want to take them when they click on the button. If you're linking to your own site, leave it in the same window. If you're linking off-site, open it in a new tab. That way that your site will stay open. That's always best practice. Okay, well let's pop over to the Design tab and start designing our button here, make it a bit more interesting. So, first one's alignment there. I'm going to leave it in the middle, I think. Next one is the actual text itself. Here you can decide whether it's light or dark in colour. But if you go down to the button below, you can style it any way you want. I'm going to use custom styles for my button. Text size I'm going to leave just as it is. Text colour I'm going to turn white. It'll actually disappear into our white background there, but we'll bring it back when we put a background in. Just down below we've got button background. And here we've got background colour, gradient or image. I'm going to pop a gradient in there. Simply click on the gradient now. Divi is really up their gradient game now. You can put in as many stops as you want by simply clicking on here and putting in the colours that you want. Click on the colour to assign it. Let's make this perhaps a lighter blue here. There we go, and we've created a gradient. And like I say, you can put as many stops in as you want. They've just added a whole bunch of extra parameters to this. You can change the direction, repeat the gradient, give it a percentage. You can choose linear, circular, elliptical, or conical, and get some great effects going. I'm going to leave mine on the linear. Obviously, you make yours how you wish. Okay. Well, let's go on down a little bit more. Background border, I really don't want a border at all on mine, so I'm going to take the border away by just taking that down to 0. Border radius, I'm going to give it quite a high border radius, say 50 pixels. I'll give it a pill shape or rounded corners at the end there. That's great. I'm not going to use a button icon. Divi's just teamed up with Font Awesome, so there's an awful lot of icons here. You can scroll or you can do a search. Or there's a little button here that if you click on this little button, it'll pop out into a breakout box that'll make it a lot easier for scrolling. Like I say, they've just teamed up with Font Awesome, so there's an awful lot there. I'm not going to use an icon on mine today, so I'm going to flip that one to off. There we go. Okay, if we go back down to spacing, we've got margin and padding. Margin's going to push this thing up or down. For instance, if I give it 50 pixels margin on top, it'll push it down. Padding is going to make our button larger, fatter if you will. So if I put some padding on the top and bottom, let's try 20. Just put in the 20, it'll put in the pix for you. Hit the chain, it'll do the opposite side. And that makes our button wider there. And we could put, say, 30 left and right. It's entirely up to you how you want to do yours. Great. So we've got our basic button here. It's the shape we want it, but we want to make it do something now. And this first one here, I'm going to have it grow and then just rise up in the air just a little bit. And let's have that background color change also. So to achieve this, let's go back into our button and we'll create our first effect. And this is common to most Divi modules. If you hover over the dark writing that's in a module, you'll see some little icons appear. Let's go down to our button background. There's our little icons. To create a hover state, hit the little arrow if there is one. Once you click on it, you can set one state for the desktop when your mouse is not on it, and one state for the hover when the mouse is on it, obviously. So when we hover on it, we can either change that gradient color out. Yeah, let's just do that today, or put a color or an image in if you want. Let's just change this blue to purple here, perhaps. And this one, we'll make a sort of lighter purple. And this one, let's change it to blue, perhaps, a light blue. And maybe have a dark blue right on the bottom there. Obviously, this is all subjective. You do it exactly how you want it. So when we hover over it, it's going to be that gradient. When we're not hovering over it, it's going to be the sort of greeny blue one there. Great. So we set a hover state for the color there. I also want it to grow in size. So still on our design tab, I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom and you're going to find transform. The first one we see here is transform scale. Now scale means it's going to grow. All sides are going to grow and everything in it's going to grow. So again, I'm going to bring up the hover state with an arrow here. Desktop, well, it's fine where it is, just like that. When we hover on it, I want it to grow maybe by 20%. So let's give it 120. And again, just put in the 120. It'll put in the percentage for you. If you've got the little chain highlighted there, as we do now, it'll do both sides at once. If you want different values for each side, just uncheck the chain. Okay, well that's good. When we hover over it, it's going to be that size. When we don't, it's going to be that size. And I also just want to finish off by making it sort of rise slightly up in the air, or from its position, I should say. So next door to scale, we've got transform translate, which basically is move. And again, got that little chain check, so it'll do both sides at once. I really only want it to go up in the air. I don't want it to move left or right, so I'm going to uncheck that this time. I'm just going to pop it up to where I want it. Just want it to rise maybe 20 pixels or so. Let's make that 20. There we go. So desktop and hover. Now it looks like we've got the 20 on the desktop as well, so let's just take that back to 0. Make sure we're on the hover state only when it goes up to 20. And negative value actually takes it up, so let's put a negative value in there. There we go. So desktop there, hover state, it's going to grow up there. Now the time it takes to go from one to the other with Divi is pretty quick. It's 300 milliseconds. If we go over to our advanced tab here, go down to the bottom, here's our transitions. There's the default 300 mils. I'm going to take mine up to say half a second for this, maybe even a bit longer. Let's say 750 milliseconds, which is 3/4 of a second. Don't want any delay. I want it to happen as soon as they put their mouse on it. And the speed curve that I actually want for this is ease in, ease out. They're all slightly different. Some will work better than others in certain situations. For my little button hover effects, I'm going to use ease in, ease out today for all of them. Okay, well, let's save our changes. That's our first little button done there. Moving on, let's create a round button now that changes and grows and has different text in it when we hover over it. So again, I'm just going to hit the little plus, and again, I'm going to add the button module. Okay, initially, well, we've got a 1 up there. Let's make this a 2. But when I hover over it, I want it to change to say something else. So again, hit the little arrow, hover up over, hit the little arrow. When we hover over it, I'm going to make it say, let's go, like I did up at the top there. So again, 2 when we're not hovering over it, let's go when we actually hover over it. Again, pop your link in down below here. I'm not going to cover that again. Alignment, again, I'm going to pop this one in the middle. Text I'm going to leave just as it is because I'm going to do custom styles for our little button here. So into the button, flip the little switch again. Again, I'm going to leave the text size just as it is. I'm going to make it white again so it will disappear again. Let's give our button a little background. I guess we've had red, so let's perhaps do green this time. And again, if we hover up, we're on the hover state at the moment. Desktop state, there we are with our 2 in it. Okay, well, I want to make this circular. And to make a circle, we got to start off with a perfect square, and then we can turn it into a circle. So this is where the little bit of coding comes in, and it's very easy. I'm going to go to the advanced. I'm going to go to custom CSS right here. I'm going to go to the main element. And I'm going to give it a fixed width and height of 80 pixels. So let's say width 80 pixels, 80px, semicolon, and I'll put this code down below. It's only 2 little lines. So we've got it a fixed width. Let's give it a fixed height. Same thing. Height, colon, 80 pixels, 80px, semicolon. Okay, so we've got a fixed height and width there, which is great, which means we can manipulate it and make it round. So we can get out of our custom CSS now. We'll go back to our design. First thing I want to do is pop that little number down to where we want it, which is in the middle here. So let's go into our spacing and use a bit of padding on the top. Let's try 15. Again, just put in the 15, it'll put in the pics. Not quite enough. Let's try 20. That's about right for me, and you can adjust it with the little arrows up here if you want to increment up and down and get it perfectly to your liking. That's great. Now when we hover over, let's see what it's doing with this one. We've not given it a hover size actually yet, so let's hit the little arrow. Yeah, we've got our let's go there. To make it a lot bigger, maybe 150 pixels on hover. So we can go back to our custom CSS, up to the advanced tab, custom CSS. We can do exactly the same thing for the code. I'm actually going to copy this, just selecting it with left mouse button, Control C to copy. I'm going to hit my little arrow. There we go. Now I'm going to paste that back in there. I'm going to change the values to maybe straight 120. I'm not quite sure what I used for this before. Doesn't matter as long as it's got the same width and height. Yeah, it's not wide enough because it's breaking that up there. Let's try 150 maybe. There we go, the let's go fits that way. Great. So now we need to do a couple of things here. I'm going to go back to the design tab and again down to the spacing. Let's make sure we're on the hover state here. Let's try 50 pixels. Oh, it's not too bad. Kind of in the middle there. Great. And I'm going to drag it up with a bit of negative margin. I don't want that icon on there either. I'm going to drag it up with a bit of negative margin so it kind of lines up with this one. So up at the top here we've got negative margin, but I only need to do this on the hover state. So again, go to the thing that you want. Make sure you're on the one that you want when you click the hover state, because if you start working on something when you've got the hover state down here and you're in the desktop state up here, it's not going to work. So make sure you're on the thing you want, which is margin in my case. And let's give it some negative margin on the top, which will take it up. Let's try 50. A little bit too much. That's about right there. Obviously, adjust yours how you wish. So when we're hovering over it, it's going to be right there. When we're not, we've got it right there. Now you may have noticed this little section below is being pushed down because we're growing this thing. If you want to avoid that, we can actually give our row here a fixed height. And I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Okay, well, it's the shape we want it. We want to change the color when we actually roll over it. And we want to make it circular. So let's go up to our button again. Close up the spacing. Here's our button again. Now, first things first, we want to make it round. So if we roll down to border radius, to make a perfect circle out of a square, we'll use percent instead of pixels. So I'm going to type in 50 and percent. And we got a perfectly round button there. And we don't need to do anything for the hover state. I want it on both. Great. So when we hover over, let's have a look at the hover state. Hitting the little arrow. There we go. It's going to grow just like that. And again, it's happening a little too quickly for me, so we'll change that transition time. And let's also give it a different color when we're hovering over it. I guess I'll change it to the red. So we can go back up to background color. Same thing again. Hit the little hover. And on hover state, let's make it red. Great, well that works for me. Now again, I'm going to just slow it down a little bit by going over to advanced transitions. And let's give this maybe half a second. Or let's make it very gradual. Let's take it up all the way to a second. If you go crazy and you want to take things to crazy times and you slide it up, it doesn't go as high as you want, you can just type in whatever value you want up here. But I don't want quite as much as that. I want mine to be a second, so let's take it down to a second, which will be 1000 milliseconds. Great. Okay. Let's save that. Now, as I mentioned, this actually moves down when we hover over this because it changes in size. If you want to avoid that, sometimes that's a good thing for a visual effect, but if you want to avoid it, just go into our little row here. Green tab for a row. And we can give our row a fixed height by going to design, sizing. And let's try giving it perhaps 200 pixels. Let's push that down a bit, and that's where it'll stay now. Obviously, you make yours the size you want. That way, when we hover over our little round button here, it shouldn't push it down. If it does, I'll readjust it so it doesn't. So let's go and hit hover state. As you can see, that's staying exactly where it was now in both versions. Okay, well, let's move on to our little third button here, which is the easiest of them all. Again, I'm going to add a button. Obviously, put in what you want your button to say. And again, we'll have a bit of change going on here. So let's say more. And when we hover over, let's have it change to info or information, even better. When we're hovering, there we go. So we've got more and information. Great. And again, obviously put your link down here. Same best practice as usual. Over to our design here. Alignment. I'm going to pop it in the middle of the column that it's sitting in. Text, I'm not going to touch that. I will customize our button though. Use custom styles for button. Text size, I think I'll leave as it is. Text color, again, I'm going to make it white. Obviously, you choose whatever color works for you. And let's give it a background. I guess we'll start off with purple this time. See, we've got our hover state up at the moment, looks like. Yep. So let's start off with purple, perhaps. That's fine. And end up on blue, the opposite of what we've got above there. Great. Okay. Let's just add a little bit of spacing to it if we go down below. I'm not going to change border radiuses. I'm going to have everything just left as it is, or at least I decide at the moment. I haven't mentioned this earlier. Divi comes with a huge amount of fonts, so if you want to change the font style, there is a absolutely crazy amount of fonts to choose from. If you want to audition one, just roll over it and it will give you an example of that font. I'm going to leave mine on the default today, but you're never stuck for choice with those fonts there. All right, well, I don't want to use a button icon this again. If you want to add text shadow, we haven't done this before, you can do here. On buttons, it actually works quite well sometimes, just makes it stand out a little bit more on that field there. Okay, well, I'm going to go down. I'm going to add a bit of box shadow to the bottom of our button. And I can see a little white border down there. So if we go back up to our button, we can roll down just below the color. We've got border width. I'm going to take that border away. You'll see it disappear. Fantastic. Okay, well, let's go down to our spacing now. And that's the only thing we're going to really change with this. So I'm going to go down to spacing. Don't need any margin for this today. And again, on regular state, I'm going to get both states up. Let's perhaps give it a little bit more top and bottom, say 15. Left and right, it's fine. I want it to be fairly skinny like that. But when we hover over it and it changes to information and changes blue, I want it to be a lot wider. So I'm going to add some to the left and right. Let's say 30 pixels. Again, put in the 30 and the pix. Make it even wider. Let's up it to 50. There we go. So it's gonna, when we hover over, it's gonna be that wide. When we don't, it's gonna be like that. And let's give it maybe half a second to do that in. Again, over to advanced, down to transitions. And let's say 500 milliseconds, half a second. And again, I'm going to use the ease in, ease out. That's pretty much it for that button. So let's save our changes now. We'll go down to the little purple button at the bottom. Save draft or publish if you're ready. Let's exit the Visual Builder. And let's go down to our little buttons down here. There's our first one. It's going to grow and rise up a little bit when we hover over it. When we let go, it's going to pop that back down to where it was. And of course the gradient background is changing there. Second one's going to change color and also grow, and the text is going to change. There we go. I left the icon on there. I might take that off. And again, that's an interesting little button. Going to get people's attention. And the third one's just going to expand, and the text is going to change when we hover over it. And that's happening just about instantly. So there you go, guys. There's three little interesting type buttons for you. Little change from the regular buttons that you see. So I hope you've enjoyed this today and found it useful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, ring the bell, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Once again, this has been Jamie from System22 and webdesignandtechtips.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.